ask you. With the vital speaking Spanish. Frank Matthews, how I vanish. Poof. Came back like I'm King Tut. Gold BBS is on a beamer. When Fat Cat was 10 queens up. Ball off the profit, not the re-up. Fly like Puerto Rican Jesus. Uptown like I'm Baby May. Just caught a touchdown from the Bay.
They can't hold her down, man.
My nigga Omari.
I represent the folks so much, niggas ask me why, but a lot of my good friends, like my nigga Mar, you know what I'm saying? He's locked up right now, my nigga O-Dogg. Like niggas like that who I really fuck with. O-Dogg. 745s back to back, me and O-Dogg. And you already know, dog. 745s back to back, me and O-Dogg.
Omari was running a side business with Jeffrey Lear without Meech's permission. So Omari was the weakest link in Meech's chain because once Meech found out what they were doing, they were dead.
FBI, open up!
In the corporate world, on the streets, and in scientific principles, there exists a universal truth. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. This concept, rooted in material science and engineering, proves that the integrity of any interconnected structure is determined by its most vulnerable component. Just as in the physical world, where a weakened link can and eventually will cause a chain to break under distress, so too can dynasties and empires crumble when faced with internal weaknesses. This is the principle that forms the backdrop for the downfall of BMF, one of the nation's most notorious drug trafficking operations, with Omari O-Dogg Mcree embodying the embodiment of this theory.
It's your boy Young G's, man. You already know, man. Snowman, Trap of the Year. It's Trap or Die. You know what I'm saying? Real talk. You know, niggas got different names for it, you know what I'm saying? Us Georgia boys like to call it a trap, you know what I'm saying? My Florida niggas call it the stroll. You know what I'm saying? My Texas nigga call it the slab. You know, but it's basically the same thing. It's like your hood, you know, where you reside, you know, niggas make a living from where they from, you know, with their environment. Because a nigga ain't, you know, a nigga out here in these streets, so quite naturally, you know what I'm saying? If you out this motherfucker and getting your money on, you be liable to turn your neighborhood into a trap. Shit. You know what I mean? We all gonna fuck around in the fourth ward right now. See if we can find this nigga O-Dogg. You know what I'm saying? One of them niggas like that.
There's a lot of stories that you could learn from the rise and fall of BMF, specifically the story of Omari O-Dogg Mcree. But instead of going down that hole, I'm going to explain to y'all, using O-Dogg himself as the perfect example as to why the group that BMF would mirror themselves after, the Mafia or La Cosa Nostra, would establish rules with its mysterious formation in the early 1800s. But also I'll explain why we can tell BMF didn't, and though we're against them, why gangs should instill background checks. Now, before I go any further, I want to be the first to say that BMF couldn't become what BMF was without guys like O-Dogg, and not him specifically, but guys just like him from the city of Atlanta, born and raised there, that have family in the city, that are rooted in the community, like O-Dogg was in the 4th Ward section of Atlanta. But the same thing that could make you win can ultimately make you lose, just like we would see with the case of O-Dogg. And when I speak of background checks, it's more like a form of paying attention and projecting. O-Dogg or Omari Mcree, as I'm going to explain very soon, would show a pattern that would start while he was with BMF and would even continue long after his betrayal of the gang.
One of those guys would have been Omari Mcree.
I got some, I don't know, somebody sent me a printout of an article with was talking to either the state or the feds. I don't know which authorities he was talking to at the time. And it was saying what you said, like, Meech would, how you go pick up, 50 bricks, 30 bricks, whatever. And he said, who would you go meet? Where would you go meet him at? I would go meet him at this place called The Gate. Who would you receive him from? And he mentioned my name. You know what I'm saying? So when I read that, I was in the county jail in Detroit. When I read that, I hurried up and wrote Meech.
Then this what you get. Everybody shining like new money. It ain't no other crew like this in the world, and there never will be another. Not black. It never will be.
We are following breaking updates in yet another shooting tied to Atlanta's nightlife.
In the past week alone, there have been several shootings at or near Atlanta restaurants or clubs.
Brittany, you make a great point. It does feel like day after day after day. It's why the police chief said it's out of control, and they're committed to finding a way to stop it.
I talked about background checks or projection. Now, only signs that BMF would get on O-Dogg would happen fast, and the collapse of the group shows me exactly what happens if you don't act fast. Now, I'm sure it was incidents prior, but October of 2004 is going to be the hot month, and it's going to start on the 7th of that month at right around 12 a.m. when O-Dogg will be arrested for 2 separate charges, obstruction and sexual battery, and held on a $4,000 bond. And to some, that might not seem like much, and J-Bo even explained it in an interview where almost like it was just an argument with his girl. But the real sign will come just about 10 days later, where through October 15th through 17th, there were 2 separate shootings, one at a strip club called Jazzy T's and another at a nightclub called the Atrium. Now, those shootings will become extremely important for a multitude of reasons. One, because the authorities will believe that O-Dogg and a really close associate of his by the name of Jeffrey Lear was responsible for both of them. The second being, due to the results of those specific shootings, the police would go on to set up checkpoints, and it would just so happen, leaving a separate strip club in the wee hours of the morning, Meech would end up arrested at one of those checkpoints, trying to pass over a fake ID. Now, that arrest wouldn't be the arrest, but authorities would use that along with the suspicion of him being involved in the murder of Anthony Wolf Jones and Riz to get a search warrant for one of Meech's spots where they wouldn't find drugs, but they would find a ledger that looked a lot like a drug transcript. Now, all of that seems semi-small, but the huge domino would fall right before the month would end on October the 22nd, 2004, when HIDTA, who is like a high-intensity drug task force in Atlanta, would start to place wiretaps on O-Dogg's phone. And it would be through those wiretaps where they would find out exactly how important he was in BMF.
Hey, what up, man? Young couples. You cannot be having the dudes coming up in here seeing all this money like this. You gotta be able to separate the two. We can't do it. We cannot do it, man. I can't afford to have them people coming in here seeing all this money like this, man.
Cooperating. Soon, right after they got caught, and when they took off, that was it. You already knew.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mcree actually signed on as a confidential informant.
Yes.
And he actually named Big Meech as his supplier for cocaine.
Yes, Omari, Mcree, yes.
I guess.
Called him O-Dogg.
Yeah, O-Dogg.
Big arrests. Atlanta police believe they have just about shut down the so-called Black Mafia family. And as our Julia Harding reports, these suspects were hiding out in one of the city's most popular areas.
U.S. Marshals say this man, one of Atlanta Police Department's top 10 most wanted, and a member of an organized crime family, is now behind bars. U.S. Marshals tell me they arrested 37-year-old Ernest Dennis and 40-year-old Jonathan Manigo here outside a Buckhead hotel. Both men, they say, are members of the so-called Black Mafia family, or BMF.
Anyone tied to BMF typically has an extensive criminal history, so we consider them to be very violent.
Investigators say the organization BMF is heavily involved in drug trafficking and has been in Atlanta at least since 2004. At that time, federal agents seized this limo with secret compartments that had almost $1 million hidden inside.
Now, the Mafia, the organization that BMF would model themselves as being a black version of, governed by godfathers and a set of rules. I won't go over all the rules, but I will go over a few of the key ones. One everybody might be aware of is you can't sleep with another made man's wife. Now, we all know what kind of problems that might present. But even though, after watching Casino, I'm almost sure that probably goes on. Now, you also have you can't whack a made man without the permission of the commission. Now, if anybody heard of a guy named Gotti from Queens, we know that has gone on before. Now, the last one I'm going to go over, and probably the most important one, at least as far as La Cosa Nostra is concerned, and that rule would be not to deal in drugs. Now, I was going to explain this rule and its importance, but this is mob ties. I already know everybody is hip, but I'm going to need somebody to get downstairs in the comment box and explain why that rule is important to the Mafia, and I'll hop right down there behind you. And here's kind of a hint for those that might not know. With BMF being the plugs and Big Meech having all the work in the world, why wasn't he cooking it? Answer that, and that'll answer the first question for you. Now, why is it never a good idea to betray your guys, you ask? You ever heard the Future song, Trap Niggas, where he would confide in God, asking him for blessings for trap niggas worldwide? It's almost like the reverse of that, when you turn your back, or you snake people, or your day ones that help you eat. And Omari O-Dogg Mcree was no exception to that, as he would feel what I would call the curse of the trap. Now, I talked about some of his early on arrests that should have been red flags for BMF. Now, one I didn't mention was one in July 28th of 2003, when he was only 24 years old. He would be arrested for driving under the influence, reckless driving, possession of marijuana, less than an ounce. Now, I purposely didn't mention that arrest as a red flag, with him being only 24 years old, down with BMF. It's easy to understand that one a little bit. But once it starts getting back to back, and the next one I did mention in October of 2004, because it would be the one after that that would be most detrimental to the gang on June 9th of 2005, when he would face significant cocaine trafficking charges, with those being the charges that would lead him to testify against Big Meech. And I felt it necessary to bring up the Mafia because O-Dogg would end up being hot for running a side operation. Really nothing to do with BMF. We could talk about the shootings, but it's really his association with a crack dealer by the name of Raphael Smurf Addison, and how he was possibly moving in the 4th Ward, as before all of that, Haida officers would have a memo with his name, look out for O or O-Dogg. But after turning on the gang with the curse on him, it's like the fall from grace would continue. He would again be arrested in September 2011, that time only on a simple battery charge. His next arrest will come in June of 2013, and this is the one I would kind of be worried about, especially if you're familiar or if you associate with him, because he is back or was back in the Georgia area. And that arrest had no specific details as far as his charges. And after that arrest, he would kind of stay off the legal radar for a little while And it kind of makes me wonder what he was going through personally with being one of the ones down with BMF to pretty much getting arrested on petty charges left and right, with the last of those arrests being on July 13, 2022, when he was 43 years old, and he would be arrested by Dorafield Police in Atlanta, Georgia, on charges of public drunkenness and being disobedient to police. And almost playing Monday morning quarterback, or looking at it in hindsight, you definitely could see how a background check or a projection of O-Dogg probably would have helped BMF. Now, y'all make sure y'all hit the red bell and subscribe button right under this video so y'all know when this real trill spill shit is dropping. Y'all get in the comment box. Y'all let me know what cities we need to go to, what stories we need to tell, what we missed, what we got wrong, all of that. Y'all tapping with me directly on Instagram, Twitter, POP_A_LOT. And until the next play, y'all know how we rocking. Rule number 1, never switch on those that had you. It's Shades Popalot. Salute the almighty mob.